Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really interesting paradox, one that seems to define a whole generation. On the one hand, you see people living these vibrant lives filled with convenience. But on the other, there's this deep, constant anxiety about money. So we're going to look at why so many young adults seem to be struggling financially.
Right, let's get into it. We hear a ton about the spending habits of Millennials and Gen Z. You know the story. Too much on avocado toast, always taking ride-sharing apps. But is it really just about those lifestyle choices? Or is there a much bigger economic story playing out behind the scenes?
So to really get this, let's meet Joey. She's a gig worker, and like a lot of us, she's gotten used to things being convenient. A big chunk of her income, which goes up and down, goes towards private hire cars and going out with friends, where, a single light can easily cost $100.
And then you've got Honey. Now, she has a steady job, a regular paycheck, but she feels this constant financial pressure. Between a student loan, saving for a housing loan, and just the temptation of online shopping, that feeling of being insecure about money, it's always there. And that's the core paradox we're digging into today. So how can both of these things be true at the same time? On one side, you've got spending that's all about convenience and what feels good right now. And on the other side, you've got this mountain of debt and this really crippling anxiety about money. Let's try and break that down.
What's so fascinating here is you see two completely different financial situations, but they both lead to that same feeling of being squeezed. You have Joey, the gig worker, whose income is all over the place, making it almost impossible to save, so one unexpected thing, like a vet bill, can wipe out everything. And then there's Honey. She gets a steady salary, but it's pretty much all spoken for by massive, long-term debts like her student and housing loans. They're both kind of stuck, just for totally different reasons.
Okay, so is this just a story about individual choices? Choosing a Grab instead of the bus, or buying that fancy makeup? Or is there something bigger going on, a huge external economic force that's putting pressure on an entire generation, no matter how they spend their money?
Well, it turns out there is a massive economic pressure cooker, and its name is inflation. And this isn't just some background noise, it's a loud, unavoidable squeeze on everyone's budget. And it's hitting young people especially hard.
In 2022, Singapore's inflation hit 7%. Now, to give you some perspective, that was the highest it had been in almost 14 years. That's a number you don't just read about, it's a number you can actually feel every single day. So what does 7% inflation really look like? Well, for a family of 5, it means that the exact same cart of groceries suddenly costs an extra $53 every single month. And that adds up really, really quickly. And if you're renting, the hit is even bigger. An average rent increase could be around $300 a month. That is a massive chunk out of a young person's budget. Money that could have gone into savings or paying off debt. Just gone. The really crucial thing to understand here is just how suddenly this all happened. For years, inflation was pretty stable. But then, after the pandemic, it was like this perfect storm hit. Global supply chains were a mess, making things hard to get. And at the same time, government support programs meant there was more money in the economy. The result? A sharp, really painful spike that basically changed the economic game overnight.
And you can see the real-world impact right here in the numbers. A survey found that a staggering 90% of young adults feel personally affected by this. What's even more worrying is that nearly a third are spending more than they actually earn, and another third are leaning on credit just to get by. This is a generation really feeling the pressure.
Okay, so if costs are going up and money is tight, how is everyone still spending? Well, this is where a really powerful combination comes into play. It's the psychology of how we shop, mixed with technology that's designed to make spending easier than ever. Like Honey says here, there are these powerful forces pushing us to spend. That peer pressure, that fear of missing out, it's amplified by social media, where it feels like everyone is constantly promoting the next big thing. It just creates this nonstop temptation to shop, either to feel good or just to feel like you're keeping up. And then you have the technology that basically weaponizes that temptation. Buy now, pay later, or BNPL. It's a payment system designed from the ground up to remove all the friction, all the immediate financial pain from a purchase, which makes it incredibly easy to just say yes. Let's look at how it actually works. Honey wants a $45 eyebrow pencil. So at the checkout, she chooses a BNPL service. Instead of paying the full $45, she only pays $15 right there on the spot. And this is the key. That $45 purchase is psychologically reframed. It doesn't feel like a $45 decision anymore. It feels like a small, manageable $15 payment. It totally changes the way you think. And while this super easy, frictionless model has caught on like wildfire, the amount of money spent through BNPL services in Singapore didn't just grow, it exploded. It jumped from $114 million in 2020 to $440 million in 2021. That's almost a four-fold increase in just 1 year.
So naturally, this explosion in what's basically a new kind of easy credit has started a really serious debate. Is buy now, pay later a useful budgeting tool that helps people? Or is it a dangerous on-ramp to a cycle of debt, especially for young people who are maybe less financially experienced?
What's so interesting here is that you have two completely different stories being told. On one side, financial experts are sounding the alarm. They're saying BNPL targets young people, encourages impulse buys, and hides risks like late fees, which are basically a form of interest. On the other side, the industry players are saying, hey, we're promoting responsible spending. Our business only works if people pay us back.
But, okay, what does the actual data tell us about how people are using this stuff? The numbers are pretty concerning. A survey found that among young adults who use BNPL, 7 out of 10 admit they spend more money each month because of it. And even more critically, 6 out of 10 are struggling to pay their monthly installments in full. So it suggests that instead of relieving financial stress, it might actually be creating more.
So where does this all leave us? You've got a whole generation dealing with high costs and this brand new, super easy way to access credit. Regulators are starting to pay attention, but the fundamental way we think about and use money might have already changed for good.
In response to all this, a new code of conduct has been introduced. It puts some guardrails in place, like caps on late fees and a $2,000 borrowing limit. But here's the catch. It's not mandatory. And there's a massive loophole. There's nothing that stops a user from just signing up with multiple BNPL companies and racking up debt across all of them at the same time.
And that really brings us back to the big picture. Like Joey says here, the goalposts for major life milestones have just moved. The cost of a starter home has literally doubled in a single generation. That fundamental economic reality means every single financial decision you make, from your daily coffee to your long-term savings, is just so much more complicated and carries so much more weight than it used to.
And this leaves us with the final, really critical question. In a world where spending is frictionless, where credit is always just a click away, and where the biggest goals like housing are getting more and more expensive, what does it even mean to be financially responsible anymore? Is the very definition of that responsibility changing right before our eyes?